Hello, and welcome back to the Eclectic podcast. We are so glad that you've decided to join us again for Volume 8 in our series. Taking a break from your monotonous drag of everyday life to peer inwards, as well as outwards, as we blast off into the farthest reaches of the multiverse. We'll be taking flight out of the presently observable reality, departing from the Milky Way in our Merkaba light vehicles, letting space and time melt away like a morning mist. And we will arrive instantaneously at the speed of now in the Whirlpool Galaxy, constellation Canis Venatici, in order to take part in the ancient ceremonies of song and dance with our brethren. The sphinxes, centaurs, mermaids, dragons, and other wondrous creations of the universe will all be gathering for this momentous time in our universe's history. So, without further ado, let's get started. Hey Josh.
Hey John. What's up?
Living the dream, man.
Yep, living that American dream.
Life is just one big waking dream. I'm living it.
We all are. Act accordingly. So I think our last podcast, we were kind of out here at our usual spot, and we were sitting here. We were kind of wrapping it up when what appeared to be a monsoon moved overhead, and we were rained out. And not only were we rained out, but upon traversing back to our vehicle, we were completely fucking soaked to the core, to the bone.
Yup.
But anyhow, I think that we kind of got cut a little bit short there, and I want to kind of touch on briefly. I want to touch on a couple of the things we were talking about before we got cut off there. And I think we were talking about truth as a remedy for life's problems, certain problems at least in life, certain frustrations and fears that people have, just kind of basically unhappiness in their life, how to use truth as a tool to cure that over time. And I just wanted to just briefly again touch on that, and I wanted to stress the point that that truth really is a powerful medicine for whatever it is that ails you in your life. It's kind of difficult to describe how to implement truth as a tool in your life. The best way I could probably describe it is that if you're unhappy with situations in your life, career, job that you're at, maybe a location that you're living, you're not happy with, whether it's you're not happy with your apartment or your roommates or the place that you live, the city, the town, the state, the country, or relationships with people. Maybe you're in the wrong group of friends. Maybe like they give you some happiness, but it's only out of like the familiar, and you don't really resonate with them. Maybe it's a relationship with, your life partner or your significant other, as it were. Maybe you're in a relationship that seems to be stagnating and there isn't much connection, but you're still in it based on that comfort, like the stability, rather than like that unconditional connection that I think everyone really seeks. Mm-hmm. I think that the way that you bring truth as like a tool to observe these aspects of your life, I think that you start out small with it, and you just kind of use it as it's kind of like a microscope from which to analyze these things in your life, and you'll be able to start kind of applying it, and at the very first it'll just be upon yourself. You'll be like, I've been lying to myself about this, or I've been trying to convince myself of this, that this is the job that I need, or it's just for a while, it's good enough for right now. Mm-hmm. Or this relationship, it's rocky right now, but it's gonna work out. Whatever the lie is that you're telling yourself, and that you don't even want to have this conversation with yourself, that's the conversation that you need to have with yourself. and you need to be able to objectively take a look back and almost see yourself as in the third person for a while, and so you can kind of analytically dissect, why are you trying to convince yourself of something that isn't true. And once you can accept that, like, all right, the truth isn't going to be the most comfortable or the most pleasant thing maybe at first, like, that's healing though. And it's like, once you like can let that kind of sink in and permeate, then I think there's gonna be a course adjustment in your life, and then things will kind of exponentially change from that point on. What are your thoughts on? Do you think that's kind of like a good message that maybe we could kind of send out there?
Yeah, definitely. It kind of, I think, also like ties in heavily with acceptance, the truth, and all that, and not so much accepting things that maybe have no basis or whatever. I mean, like things that we're uncomfortable with, those conversations we don't want to have with ourselves, those lies that we tell ourselves. Once we can accept all truths as true, then you can kind of start to move from there and do great things. Another thing that I found interesting is like all these lies that we tell ourselves in these situations, like jobs and relationships and our social circles. It's just for a while, it's good enough for right now. Beneath that, I think, is some kind of fear.
Yeah.
And it kind of ties into the whole, you don't want to have that conversation with yourself type thing. But
yeah.
Once you can get past that and actually take a brutally honest, objective look at yourself, you can really change things. And one point I would like to add, like, with the fear aspect and these lies we tell ourselves, like maybe it's, for example, a relationship that is perhaps abusive in some way, like emotionally neglectful or even physical abuse or whatever. The truth behind that would be we accept the love that we think we deserve. And that's why we stay with those kinds of people. Or when the truth sets in is when you kind of realize, hey, I don't have to be a victim. I'm choosing this.
Yeah.
And getting out of said relationship or situation that's causing discord in your life, because we're meant to live in harmony.
Yeah. Yeah, it is like that, accepting the truth, and kind of that first, when you take that turn to start implementing it, that is kind of, I think, like the big hurdle. That's like the big wall that needs to be crossed before you're going to see any change, any positive change anyhow.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, the trick is though, because it is real easy to get locked down into a situation that it's really hard to make that decision, and you kind of become a victim to the cycle that you've allowed yourself to fall into.
Mm-hmm.
There's a quote from one of my favorite books that I'd like to read, because I think it's really like a concise and perfectly sums up kind of that situation that a person can find themselves in. The quote's from Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. It's from the end of chapter 5 in book 2 of that novel. And I'll just read that for you here. It's about someone that's in a situation that I think we're talking about right now. Someone that hasn't been able to accept or hasn't been able to use the truth yet to analyze their life, and they're kind of stuck in this kind of hellish cycle of unhappiness. The quote is, "Sadly, sadly, the sun rose. It rose upon no sadder sight than the man of good abilities and good emotions, incapable of their directed exercise, incapable of his own help and his own happiness, sensible of the blight on him, and resigning himself to let it eat him away." Charles Dickens. I think that at least for me, is something that I can really relate to, and I feel like that's a perfect description of certain periods in my life, and certain ways of thinking that I've gone about for extended periods of time, and understanding what maybe the problem is, but not having, being incapable of their directed exercise, incapable of your own help and your own happiness, even though you are sensitive to that blight and you understand what's going on. I think that's just kind of a metaphor, at least what I take out of it, for not implementing the truth in your life and allowing you to continue on with lying to yourself, probably usually in a lot of subtle and subconscious ways, but lying nonetheless. And it's definitely a challenge. It's definitely a big step to take in one's life, but I think that if you do implement the truth in your life as a tool, you will see changes. You'll see some subtle changes immediately, absolutely immediately, overnight. Bigger changes, the kind of changes that I think most people are looking for and would want, those come with time. Those will come down the road further, and you can't predict it with any accuracy. You can't really lay out a timetable, but those changes will occur over months, years, maybe decades, I don't know. But I think the trick is just to get on that right course of truth rather than covering up for yourself and making excuses for within your own psyche for things that make you unhappy.
Yeah, and like a lot of times I think people don't realize that it's not like a outright blatant thing where they're lying to themselves. It's like it's much more subtle, and they don't really even realize it, making justifications and rationalizing. But yeah, I like that quote a lot. I think it's safe to say that everyone in their life goes through something that is a kind of self-destructive cycle, takes many forms, but yeah, it seemed to like put into perfect words that submission to it every day, and it's such a like bleak thing, like and I think oftentimes for the people who need to make these changes, either they don't know what to do, how to go about it, making the change, or the thought, the concept of actually doing what they have to do to change it is too frightening or too painful.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they just accept where they're at.
Yeah. Acceptance of unhappiness, I think, is killer. It's a killer. And maybe we can kind of extend this kind of idea into how spiritual progression really is kind of a never-ending quest, and not something that will ever come to full conclusion, because I think that it's in that quest that positive change occurs and you find happiness. It's in the searching a lot of the time, rather than arriving at some totally like placid position of where you can just, everything's just perfect in my life.
Right now.
Yeah, because that's if there's not something you can improve in your life or some aspect of yourself, then what point is there for tomorrow, really? So I don't know. Like, first of all, would you agree that spiritual progression is a never-ending journey?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think I've made the analogy before on a previous podcast, but I really like it, so I'll go ahead and say it again. Spiritual progression, intellectual growth, gaining a better world perspective, they all can be attributed to this. It's like rowing upstream. The minute you think you're there and stop putting forth the effort to keep moving forward, you're going to start drifting backwards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that is a really good analogy. To stop is to go backwards.
Uh-huh.
Exactly.
Because, like, even if you are, like, the most enlightened you could possibly be at this point in your life, which I find hard to believe any enlightened person would say that. They are probably always striving for more. That's why they reach the enlightened status.
Yeah.
Even if you are at the pinnacle of your spiritual growth for the day or whatever, for your lifetime, there's still so much to do going out and helping other people and spreading that light to the world, so to speak.
Yeah, and I like, at this point in my life, there are thousands of things that I want to improve about myself and ways that I want to become just a better person and a better human. And, it's daunting if I was to list everything out. It'd be very daunting, but I would take that over like having only like one or two things listed on a page or something and look at that, because I don't want to put that ceiling above myself,
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, I'm not so like self-satisfied that I think that I've got it all figured out or whatever. So as daunting as all these thousands of changes that I want to make in my life, like, I will take that any day over like some superficial veneer of being there, so to speak, being at journey's end, Oh, I'm satisfied with everything, I'm a good person. I'll stop trying to improve.
Yeah.
I think that's if you start having an attitude like that, well, you have one foot in the grave already.
Yeah, and it kind of makes you less relatable too
Sure.
For maybe other people that you're having deep conversations with. If you are so set in your ways that you're sure you've got it all figured out, like, that might be alienating to some people. There was something you said there that really piqued my interest, but I kind of forgot. Oh yeah, like you got all this stuff you want to change about yourself, thousands of things or whatever. I think the key for that is, like you touched on earlier, just enjoying the journey. It's about the journey, not just getting to some mythical place at the end where, oh, everything's fine now. So
Yeah.
the key is not to look at everything, list it all out, and like fret over it because it becomes some insurmountable task and bigger than it really is in our heads.
Yeah.
It's just to live one day at a time and constantly strive for that growth. And through time, all that stuff will just take care of itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Like, maybe like some easy, cheap metaphor we could employ here. Let's just say that maybe if we were cigarette smokers, hypothetically speaking, and we wanted to quit, well, it's tough to just quit, But the positive thing we can take away from it is slowing down and making strides towards quitting.
Yeah.
And having those those moments where you're sneaking a cigarette, they become fewer and far between. And eventually, like, it's that, like, that progress of, you're in the process of quitting, you're improving. It's something that is improving, and don't beat yourself up over the fact that you're not there yet, but the fact that you're actually making an attempt and you are, maybe becoming healthier, and you're at least on the path of accomplishing that, rather than not taking any steps at all towards that and just, languishing in the position that you were in yesterday. It's like every day try to get better with it.
Resigning to it again, like we were talking about, like the destructive cycles, it ties into that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like just, progress, not perfection. The key is to keep that in mind, but also not to get complacent and justify and rationalize. It's a fine line between making progress and kind of just stagnating.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I like to do to kind of touch on that spiritual growth is a never-ending journey. Something I like to do periodically if I'm feeling kind of out of touch spiritually or just kind of lost. My day-to-day life seems to just, it gets to the point where every day is the same as the last one, and it all kind of just blurs together into one hellish day.
Yeah.
But something I like to do to kind of break that cycle, break that monotony, and get me thinking about stuff is writing out a list of things I want in life, and not so much like material things like goals and ambitions, dreams, stuff you want to accomplish.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that can devolve into a wholly depressing kind of negative exercise in all these things I don't have and focusing on, just all the withouts. So something I like to do to counterbalance that is to write out a gratitude list and make sure that I make it a little bit longer than the other list. Because if we really think about it, no matter how bad our situations are in life, it's not that hard to find things to be grateful for.
Absolutely. I think that's an important point. I think that there's so much to be thankful for, just being alive today as a human, whatever the situation is. That gratitude list, I think, inevitably, if it's objective, should be a lot longer than the the unattained, unhappy list. You know, and that is a really good exercise. I think you can learn a lot about yourself if you sit down and do that. Mm-hmm. And I think you'll come away with kind of a buzz from it. Wow, things aren't so bad.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. The last time I did it, I was just in a funk for it seemed like years, man. I hadn't really taken an introspective look for a long time. Probably because I knew I wasn't gonna like what I saw.
Yeah.
But I did, and started, going through these spiritual exercises, meditating and all that stuff, reading spiritual texts, and got down to it and wrote those lists, and it was like this crazy buzz, man. It was almost indefinable. But I think another thing, kind of tying into that, is the ability to take a negative experience in your life and turn it into a positive.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm grateful I learned this lesson from this bad experience, or I'm grateful that I persevered through whatever the adversity may be because it made me who I am today.
Yeah, it kind of ties into what we were talking about a couple podcasts ago, about seemingly negative things that happen in your life that turn out to be positive in the long run. Mm-hmm. That you gain some invaluable experience or some invaluable insight from that unhappy place that you were at, and then later down the road you can really appreciate it for the changes that it catalyzed in your life. I think, and to tie it back in here, I want to touch on something to tie back in a little bit to the way that maybe truth can be used again as a tool to improve your life and bring about positive changes. There was well, first of all, every person has needs, right? We all have different levels of needs, whether they're physical health needs or whatever it is, and then you get more into the psychological and spiritual needs. There was a psychologist, I think his name was Abraham Maslow. Maslow diagrammed a chart, the the hierarchy of needs of an individual. And I'll just kind of read off here what it's the chart that he set up was kind of pyramid in organization.
Mm-hmm.
At the very bottom are a person's physiological needs, such as, you need to breathe air, you need water, food, sustenance, you need to sleep. Those are the most base level of needs to just stay alive as a living organism, as a human.
Mm-hmm.
Up from that are kind of like the safety, security needs. Like you need to some extent like employment to keep providing food. At least in some regard, you need health in some regard, and security, kind of that knowing where the next meal is going to come from, that type of thing. Shelter, a solid, comfortable shelter that you'll be able to go to and sleep, and so that's kind of the next rung up on the ladder. Up from that is a need for belonging, which is like friendship with other people, like companionship. You want to fit in, you need that belonging, you need to have some interaction with other people.
A sense of community.
Yeah, exactly. And, intimacy with another person, everyone wants a relationship, at some point in their lives, whether or not you're ready yet, but you want that eventually. That is something everybody needs, or wants,
Yeah.
Up from that, you get into, like, the needs of esteem, self-esteem. Like, you want to have some sort of empirical kind of achievement in life, whether it's with a career, a job, or you have a house, whatever, that you're proud of. You've accomplished something, you've built something. You have respect from others. You have good standing in your community. There's kind of that level of achievement that I think that comes with the esteem needs. Now, those are the first four, levels of the pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
And at the very top, and I think this is the most important one for us living in today's world, at least in middle class America.
Mm-hmm.
Something that hasn't been available to a lot of people throughout history. Something that's fairly fresh and new, because of course in prehistoric times you were completely worried with your physiological needs, just surviving. But something that everyone has a ability now to kind of attain today. It's really a gift that we're alive and breathing here today in this time. And it's the very top level of this pyramid of needs, and it's self-actualization. And what self-actualization is finding out who you really are, what you really believe about the world, what your most core values and beliefs are, and that from that springs creativity and art and acceptance, like a lack of prejudice towards other people, like love and acceptance of facts and ability to recognize facts as facts, and just that whole, I would basically categorize it as just the truth. That's the very top of the pyramid. Self-realization, self-actualization, the truth. And I think that it's important to not get too caught up on the other needs, and it's important to not overlook this critical cap to human existence, which is the truth. And I think that can be employed, like we talked about earlier, that it is the crowning level of human need. And I think we all have that need for self actualization, and I think that it's missing from a lot of people's lives. And therein, like we were talking about, tying back to that, that's what, there's like this void in a lot of people's lives, and it's hard for them to figure it out and make adjustments. And how come I'm not happy? I don't really understand. Well, I'm not happy. Do I need to go see a therapist and get prescribed some antidepressants? Whatever it is, it's like maybe you haven't taken a look at this hidden layer of needs that every person has. So I think that, you know, it's important to acknowledge that you have a need for the truth and for self-realization, and to express it, and to search for it and express it in, your own individualistic way.
Yeah. I think that you touched on a good point. It's definitely self-realization, self-actualization can bring a certain level of peace to the individual. Kind of, when you get to that point, all the problems of day-to-day life kind of seem smaller, or just kind of dissipate, kind of transcend all that shit. But that being said, it is incredibly tough to overcome these other 4 layers that come before it. It's kind of like the persistent illusion that keeps us from focusing on the truth.
Yeah.
Gotta have food, water, all that at a basic level. Safety. Gotta have, security, employment, belonging. Gotta have all that. Esteem needs, which I think kind of ties into belonging quite a bit. It seems like those two are kind of devoted to fitting in. Because, you could argue that might be the main driving factor for someone to want to achieve things in their life, is to get pats on the back, or...
Yeah, I think I think as a as a race, as a species, the human race, we used to be stuck on the bottom layer, like we were saying, the cavemen, physiological needs. I think as a race, we're now in those, like, middle brackets, of belonging and security. And that's kind of where we are as a whole right now, and we haven't reached the top level of that yet. So we're trying to break through right now. And so we're a lot better off than we were, hundreds, thousands of years ago, in previous generations. But we're still kind of stagnating there now in today's modern world, and it's still in the middle brackets. We haven't broken through to the higher level of those needs. And I think some people do, and I think those are the people that are experience a lot more happiness in their life. Doing what they want to do, being who they want to be, being creative, being able to be an accepting person. So I think, that we're going in the right direction, but we're not, we're not to the top of the pyramid yet.
Yeah, we've kind of evolved up that way, but we still need to break through. We still need to break through that last, up to the top level, break through that last barrier. And it's not easy. That's probably the main reason why it's such an obstacle, and seems to not take a lot of priority in a lot of people's lives, is because meeting those other needs is so time-consuming and stressful that it's difficult to take the time that it takes, and the actual honest mindset, get real objective and just sit around and contemplate things. It's hard to find that time.
Yeah, it definitely is. Hard to find the time to even realize that there is a higher, realm of life, and that higher need, for people. It's hard for people to even realize it. And I think maybe that's the thing, is most people don't even realize that there is that, like, upper echelon of existing. And it mostly is due to getting caught up with, these lower needs. I think we can characterize them as lower needs.
And, like, a couple suggestions I would make to people who are finding that a struggle, if they're honestly want to achieve some sort of self-realization, some measure of enlightenment. Couple things that I find helpful that you can pretty much do any day. It just requires kind of cutting out some other amenities of modern life. Maybe watch a little bit less TV, and read a book or a spiritual text or something with actual substance.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that you can't find good TV and stuff, but if you want spiritual growth, that's not really the place to get it. It's entertaining, but not really chock full of substance and, kind of introspective, wider perspectives on the universe.
Yeah.
But that's one thing. And another thing is, people say they don't have time to meditate and stuff. Well, how about every night before you go to sleep? Just meditate as you're falling asleep.
Yeah.
That's something I practice. I mean, I try to do it more than that, but if nothing else, if I don't have any half hour to an hour of meditation throughout the day, I'll throw it in as I'm laying in bed trying to go to sleep, because I have trouble going to sleep anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think that even if it's just a matter of, for 20 minutes before you go to sleep, just kind of to evaluate the day that you've had, and all right, here I am, here I am, Josh, another day gone by. Where am I at today? Has it changed at all from 24 hours ago? Where do I want to be in 24 hours? Where do I want to be in a month? Where do I want to be in a year? Mm-hmm. Just being able to have that truthful, honest conversation with yourself, and to contemplate that. I think that is kind of the first step in towards, employing the truth in your life. And I think people will see, dividends from that if they practice it regularly.
Mm-hmm. And even taking small measures like that. Like, I'm not saying quit watching TV altogether, because I know nobody would do that. But, cut out some of the garbage TV that you watch. Maybe cut out some of the news. Everybody reads the news or, read stuff on the internet. Why not shut that off for a half hour every night and read a book? And then go back to it.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I think people will find, if they start taking these small measures and start seeing the small dividends that come with that it's actually really rewarding, and that they'll start doing it more because they want to.
It'll become more of an exponential force in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll lead to more and more new things. And, it definitely, it's got me through a lot of tough times in the last year, for me at least, I know. And, we've all been there, It's like, and it is a useful tool. And just try it. Just try it.
Yeah. It, something you said that kind of ties in with, just try it. A lot of times, things in life that are worthwhile, I'm going to say all the time, it takes a lot of hard work to get there. And it's not always stuff that sounds like the funnest thing at the time, but you were talking about, like, asking yourself, what am I doing with my day? What am I going to do with the rest of my day? Where do I want to be in 24 hours and stuff? I think a lot of people maybe ask that, or what I want to do, but maybe a more to the point question would be, what should I do?
Yeah. Yeah, what's really right here? What's right for me to do? Definitely. And tying into the whole, like, hierarchy of needs, we've both read the Bhagavad Gita, and we kind of both, I'd say we both dabble in Hindu spirituality. I think we've both gained a lot of insight from just our kind of cursory, rookie understanding of Hinduism. Things that probably, of course, we weren't raised with, being, middle-class Americans, we weren't raised with any of that. But it's interesting, I think that there's a concept in Hinduism, they're called the gunas, and I think they are basically the same thing as what Maslow was saying with this hierarchy of needs, and the way he diagrammed that. The gunas are kind of, I'd say they're qualities of your life, or maybe they're stages that a person kind of can live in, and there's three gunas. There's tamas, rajas, and sattva. And, sorry to any Hindus out there that know this a great deal better than I do. This is just my interpretation of them. But tamas is like the lowest level of I guess, I don't know if I'd say awareness about yourself, but it basically entails just like inertia in ignorance, and you're just kind of feeding off the prior moment, and it's kind of forcing you into the next moment, and you're not really thinking about anything. You're not thinking about any direction your life's taking. You're basically just surviving and taking what you can find, and not really worrying about any effect that maybe your actions are having on anybody else. It's kind of probably the most selfish stage that you can live in, according to the guna idea, the concept. Above that is rajas, which is energy and passion. Maybe it's a little bit more, it's not so self-absorbed. It's you're an energetic person. Maybe you're out there doing things in the world. You're living your life, and maybe you're a good person. You care about a lot of things, but maybe you're not. Still, you're not really living with a real direction. You're not living in harmony. There are a lot of obviously improvements that you could make and would like to make with your life, and I think I would say that probably most people live in this category. It's kind of the average person, the average Joe. Mm-hmm. And they're not a bad person by any means or anything like that, but they're struggling with a lot of things in life, and they're having
no direction.
Yeah, no direction.
Misguided.
Having a tough time figuring a way out from the cycle that they're in.
Yeah.
And if you can get beyond that and you can get to the stage of sattva is like living in with harmony and purity and goodness and like kind of the law of nature, and it's basically, I think, enlightenment on like this plane of existence in this life, at least. It's you're truly taking into account all the effects that your actions have on everybody else, and you truly have like a direction that you're trying to take your life in, and like a pure goal, and you're trying to incorporate the truth into your life, at every turn, and trying to you're living in that kind of harmonious phase that I think we all want to live in. And basically, if you can rise up through these three levels, there's a concept called moksha, I think is the pronunciation, but it's liberation, salvation, illumination, nirvana. I don't think that's something that people generally achieve in this lifetime. I think that is like the goal of living your life in sattva. That's like upon death or whatever, reborn into the next life, whatever it is. Whether it's the idea of heaven, the idea of being reborn, and as you've transcended all the pitfalls of life, and you've reached that true like stage of oneness with the universe, so to speak, with God, whatever way you want to choose to characterize it. Mm-hmm. And I just think that's kind of the same idea as Maslow's needs chart. It's kind of the same concept, just put, it's in a more cultural and spiritual way.
Mm-hmm. It's more like kind of on a individual person basis.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's more of a reference to spiritual levels than a needs chart. But like in like the Bhagavad Gita and some Hindu philosophies, the three gunas are like operating principles or like tendencies of people. And sattvas is kind of like the sphere of like creation and love and benevolence. Rajas is like preservation, passion, lack direction, like we talked about. Like, they just need to harness their energy. Tamas is kind of like destructive, like rigid mindsets and stuff like.
Yeah.
People.
You're actively like hurting others.
Yeah, or like you try and talk some sense to them, and they say, you really shouldn't talk to someone like that who can end your world.
Yeah, people like that.
We've all met them.
Yeah.
We all know people like that.
We encounter people living in Tomas. Yeah. But it's an interesting concept, and maybe I'd throw that out there for anyone that might be interested. Read the Bhagavad Gita. It's very enlightening, and it's a useful book, and I think that it's well worth your time. I think you can get a lot out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was very enlightening reading that book. That's not to say, like, out of every religious text I've ever picked up, be it some Christian stuff or Hindu, Buddhists, I really like their philosophies. I've studied on that in the past. I probably need to brush up on it to say anything pertinent right now, but they're all about, acceptance and love, and
Yeah.
pretty much any spiritual text I've ever taken the time to read and put aside my own prejudices and my own rigid mindsets and actually picked up something that I didn't know anything about and read it. It's always a rewarding experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gives you more perspective, which I think kind of the whole spiritual journey is about. It's being able to relate with your fellow man,
Mm-hmm.
and see the oneness that we all share, the self that lies behind everything.
Yeah, which is what we all really want, right? At the end of the day, and it takes perceptual discernment. I think that there's just not enough in our day-to-day lives. Maybe we just aren't as discerning as we should be, and picking and choosing the influences and the ideas that we let into our lives and the things that we let shape us as people. I think that we just need to be very discerning about that and kind of hone our perception. And so, we let in things that are more pure and good, and we recognize negative, bad influences on us, and, we can turn them away.
Yeah.
And stay on the true course.
Not grant them any power in the first place, those negative things. Yeah, it's just a great tool for dealing with life,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, is there anything else that you want to say here? Any other topics we could touch on?
How much time we got left?
Not too much.
Well, we could talk a little bit about, it's not related really to anything we were talking about, except for maybe the Maslow's needs chart, because it's just another like psychological kind of experiment. But these Cornell students, or maybe they were graduates, I don't know, they did a study there at Cornell University. It was David Dunning and Justin Kruger. And they did these experiments that there was this phenomenon that they noticed when they did these experiments is kind of like aptitude tests for a large control group of people.
Yeah.
And they asked people to assess themselves in these tests. And they came up with this, it's been called the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's this kind of, I think it falls under the cognitive bias psychology, like, sub-area. But essentially, people who did really well in these tests tended to underestimate their ability and kind of think that they weren't as good at at the test because they thought it was like common knowledge for everybody. So they would consistently rate themselves lower than their actual scores would reflect.
Yeah.
And the other side of it was people who were not adept at these certain experiments or whatever they were asking them about grossly overestimated their skill.
their abilities.
Yeah, and they were also quick to kind of discredit other people's abilities who were actually
Maybe they're
good at
quicker to judge other people.
Yeah.
So maybe that the way we could put that is that maybe some of the most gifted people underestimate themselves and maybe quite often don't achieve in materialistic societal terms great things, whereas the people that maybe are out there doing something and having some measure of success, but they're overestimating their abilities. Basically, they think a lot higher of themselves than than reality might suggest. About their own talents and their own skills and abilities, their own mental kind of stage that they're on. Whereas again, the gifted people are a lot more unsure of themselves. And that I think that is a really interesting study that was done. That's very interesting, and people that I know, and looking at people I know, I would say that the most gifted, intelligent, kind, and loving people that I know are the ones that maybe don't seem like they're doing so hot in life. They don't have like a steady job, like a sturdy, solid career going. Maybe they're not in some relationship, with a baby on the way or whatever. Maybe they seem more like outcasts, but if you knew them, they are very, very intelligent and intellectual and kind and generous people. And on the flip side, some people that I might know that have achieved some measure of success in the material. Maybe they have maybe they're married and have kids and have a nice house, and they're a real solid functioning member of society, or at least of the community. If you know them on a personal basis, they look like they're the I don't know how to describe this. They're like the popular people, maybe, is a way. Kind of just they have this like superficial veneer of being this like well-to-do person or this well-to-do family. If you know them personally and have a conversation with them face to face, you'll find a lot of kind of prejudices, and maybe they're not such pleasant and kind people. Maybe they're a little bit more vindictive and judgmental, and I'll just say this: usually not as smart. They're not very intelligent, and it's just interesting, kind of the both sides of that coin, and the way that people make assumptions about themselves and about the people that they know.
Yeah, and you made some really good points there. I liked the part about people who maybe don't have all this tangible achievement in their life or whatever, probably being really good people deep down, and people who maybe have all these achievements and stuff maybe sacrifice something spiritually along the way. And it's a generalization, it's a blanket statement. That's not to say there aren't good people out there who are very relatable and fun-loving and just peaceful, happy people.
Yeah.
But it's kind of an anomaly more than the norm. But yeah, you kind of see it with people who have all this achievement and stuff. They kind of seem to get complacent or whatever, and set in their own ways and set in their mindsets, and underneath, when you really get to know them, they're kind of shallow, prejudice, kind of hateful people.
Yeah.
Just judgmental.
And I'll say one thing for all my friends, that most of my friends were all kind of in that same kind of group within our communities, that we're not the most well-to-do. We're not the most. We don't have that image of success. You know, like we're out there doing the right thing and being responsible adults or whatever like way you choose to describe us, or at least friends I know. As far as kindness and generosity go, like I know that like some people that I know that have all these things that they have a great career, and they've done, from society standards, they've made all the right decisions and they've done the right thing, you know, and they're hardworking and they have a family and kids and they drive a nice truck or a car or whatever it is, and some people like that are really judgmental, like you said, and I know that they would judge some of my close friends that are, you know, have struggled finding their place in the world, and they're, you know, but they're a lot more introspective, and, you know, they don't have the money, and they don't have the relationship, they don't have the fancy car or the house, they don't have, you know, all of that, and they get judged by the other people for being some sort of, like, maybe they would describe them as, like, outcasts, or you know, just from glancing at them, like, oh, that drug addict or some, you know, like, assigning all these kind of just really judgmental terms to describe them. But, you know, we've both been in that situation. There's nothing like generosity, like a friend that neither of you have a fucking dollar between you, and they'll bum you their last cigarette or a beer out of, you know, the 3 that they have, and you'll sit around and have a good conversation. They don't expect you to repay them or pay them back or whatever. Like, that's just true friendship and true generosity. I mean, you know, when you're going to give your friends, you know, you're going to split literally everything that you have at that point in your life.
Yeah.
And I think that's true, like, companionship and you know, not to be too negative here, but, you know.
Sorry about that. We are running out of time. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you again soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.